Hey everybody, it's Mitch, and welcome to my next video. Today we've got another Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 class description. And today, coming at you from the Complete Divine, we've got the Favored Soul. So, we're going to talk about what is the Favored Soul. We're going to talk about how you would roleplay a Favored Soul. Then we're going to talk about what the Favored Soul gets. And finally, we're going to talk about how good the Favored Soul is and how you might use it in a build. So let's get started. So the Favored Soul. Basically, they're very similar to that of the Cleric, but also like a Sorcerer. They're kind of a weird hybrid of the two. They are a Cleric, or they are a Divine Caster that, unlike the Cleric, they aren't studying and putting in like that devout time and worship in order to gain their divine powers. No, these powers come naturally, and therefore they are a spontaneous caster, like the sorcerer. It's a very strange class in that regard. So that's what they are. Well, and they also there's some rumors on how they came about. Some thoughts are that the Favored Soul is basically someone who was endowed with, who's just kind of chosen by their deity to, be their champion, and just the deity just is like, yes, I'm going to give you these powers, and they just sort of have them naturally. They aren't praying to their deity for them; they just have them. Yeah, which does make them kind of special because the deity actually singled them out and said, yes, I choose you to be my servant. So very interesting. Let's talk about how you'd go about role playing one of these. So basically, these guys are, like I say, clerics, but they are also, well, they have that spontaneous nature. So they are going to have a little bit of a different attitude than clerics. They're a lot more free than clerics. They're not going to have that whole rigorous, let's follow the teachings of our deity. They're like, yeah, I mean, he's a good guy. We should follow him. But does he really want us to do that? I don't think so. I don't know. I think he's more of this. A Favored Soul is going to have more of a nonchalant attitude toward, yeah, they are definitely devout followers of their deity, but they're also, not as rigorous about it. They're going to do their own thing. So yeah, they, let's see, their alignment is going to have to match their deities, or be one step away, just like a cleric. So that's interesting. Although they do tend to favor more chaos, just in general. It's a very slight leaning, just because they just have a more free attitude. On top of that, they can't be neutral unless their deity is neutral. So, yeah, but they can, or true neutral rather. So yeah, let's see. Religion. Unlike a cleric, these guys are going to have to worship a deity. That deity chose them, singled them out, and they are going to worship that deity. The deity would not have chosen them and singled them out to be their servant if they weren't loyal to that deity. The deity just wouldn't do that. Let's see. They tend to, anybody can become a Favored Soul. Now, when you look at the more monstrous races like orcs and goblins and stuff, you are going to see more of them than clerics. Not so much in that there's more Favored Souls there, just that there's less clerics. They don't really have the organizational structure, whereas literally anybody can pop up as a Favored Soul. There might even be a few more as well, because the deity might just be like, hey, I need more servants. I don't really have enough people here, so I'm just going to allow more people to be my servant. They're also going to not relate well with other classes. Well, with some, like they're going to like sorcerers and things like that, but other clerics, they're going to be at odds with a little. like they get along. They kind of like understand the same thing, but they just have very different mindsets. The cleric's very rigorous and very like, this is the teaching of this deity, I will follow it. Whereas the favorite soul's like, yeah, I mean, like, this is what he wants. Like I said before, this is what he wants, but it's like, I think I think this is what he'd really want. I know it says that, but like, I don't really follow it. This actually comes back a little bit to my whole rules as written versus rules as intended. Um, Clerics are very much rules as written, like doctrines as written. They're very much, yes, the doctrines of the church are this, therefore I will follow it. Whereas favorite souls are more, rules as intended or doctrines as intended. They're like, yeah, I get that it says that, but I think it really means this. So that's going to be a major rift between the two. In terms of what they're going to be doing, they're going to be following the same role as the cleric for the most part. Their spell list is, the same. So their role is going to be pretty much the same as that of the cleric. But yeah, when you're playing them, you're definitely going to want to have more of a free-flowing style than what you would see from a cleric. You're going to see a lot more just looking at things from open interpretations of what a deity might want, rather than a strict understanding that a cleric would likely have. So, yeah, that's going to be the real difference that you're going to see. You're going to be a bit of a loner. You're not going to be like tied to the church like a lot of clerics will. You're just going to kind of, go out, do your thing, spread the word as best you can, but you're doing your own thing. So yeah, that's basically how to play them. Let's talk about what you actually get. So, D8 hit dice, same as the cleric, pretty solid. Average base attack bonus, okay, decent enough. All good saves. Now that is kind of big. Like, all 3 saves are good. You don't see that very often, and it's mostly just monk and some monk prestige classes that you see that with. But favorite souls get all good all good saves. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, being able to have that. They're also going to get their skills are 2+ int. Their skill list is a bit weird too. They don't get knowledge religion. Instead, they just get knowledge arcana, which may or may not be an issue when you get to epic level, depending on how you're interpreting things. If you're doing strict rules as written, it's a big issue, because they don't get the skill that they need in order to advance their epic spellcasting. But considering they don't have that as a class skill, it could be interpreted that you use knowledge arcana for this instead for their casting. It's really up in the air. That one's a really big gray area and could be an issue. And funny enough that rules as written becomes an issue on a class that tends not to follow their doctrines as written. They tend to be more of a intended kind of people. So interesting that shows up there. Let's see. It's only 2+ int as well, so their skill list's not great. Weapon and armor proficiency, so they're going to get all simple weapons as well as medium armor, as well as shields, but and they are also going to get proficiency with their deity's favorite weapon, whatever that might be. So that's kind of interesting. Spellcasting, they get spells every level. Their spell list is the same as that of a cleric, but it's also going to be spontaneously cast. They're going to get the spell progression of a sorcerer as well as the spells known as a sorcerer. I'm pretty sure they match. I didn't check to see if it's like perfect, but it's pretty close either way, if not identical. And the way they cast is kind of a hybrid of the two, of cleric and sorcerer as well. So we'll talk about spells known in a sec, but the way that they cast, so they're going to be the way that they determine whether they can cast a spell or not, as well as any bonus spells, is charisma based, just like a sorcerer would be. But to figure out the spell save DC is wisdom based, which is a bit of an issue because it sort of requires both if you want all the benefits. that can be kind of problematic. Yeah, they get spells known as well, which is more of a hindrance for them than it would be for a sorcerer, because clerics normally just know all their spells, whereas wizards actually have to invest in order to know all their spells. So being limited to just a handful of spells per day, bit of a problem. They're losing a bit more than a sorcerer would comparatively because of that. Although really there's only so many good spells out there, so it's not super big loss. You can definitely put the good cleric spells as your spells known, and not have to worry about preparing, which is quite nice. Although it does become an issue of with meta magic feats. I got a whole video on explaining the whole problems with spontaneous casting, as well as advantages. Yeah, so spellcasting's a bit of a thing for them. It's one of the more complicated ones because of the dual casting slot situation. We'll talk about that more later in the video. Let's see, they get Deities Weapon Focus. So at 3rd level, they get Weapon Focus with their Deities favored weapon, which can be useful. This can be a decent way to gain some divine casting, as well as get Weapon Focus for effectively free for some builds. So can be useful. Plus you get that +1. Useful. They get energy resistance at 5th, 10th, and 15th level. They'll get to pick an energy type and gain energy resistance 10 to that. So that's kind of nice. So they'll eventually be resistant to 3 different types of energy, which can be useful. They get and specialization at 12th level. So at that point, they are going to get that +2 to damage with their deity's weapon, which honestly they should be using their deity's favored weapon since they get bonuses. At 17th level, they get wings, which is nice. They get the ability to fly with good maneuverability. It's either feather or bat-like. Feather for good, bat-like for evil. Neutral can kind of pick or choose. Now, if you're neutral and your deity's good, you probably should go with the feathery. If you're neutral and your deity's evil, you should probably go with the bat-like. You don't have to, but you probably should. Damage reduction. So at 20th level, you get damage reduction. This will give you, it'll give you, what is it, DR10, either silver or cold iron, depending on whether you're chaotic or lawful. If you're neutral, you can pick either or, although again, if your deity is lawful or chaotic and you're neutral, you should probably go with the same one as your deity. But yeah, you can kind of do whatever. Yeah. Only one of those will ever come up, since you can't be neutral if your deity is not neutral. So, but yeah, so that's what they get. Let's talk about how good they are. Whew, there's a lot to talk about. One major issue that comes up, one of the first things that's not super obvious at the surface level is, unlike clerics, you don't get domains and you don't get turn undead, which are some really powerful things. With turn undead, you can get some nice stuff like divine meta magic. Domains also give you lots of granted powers, some extra spell slots. That can be kind of cool. But although you actually get more spell slots with this than you would with cleric anyways. 50% more not including domains. You maybe get like 25% more once you include domains into that. But still, it's a bit of a loss not to get domains, because they often give granted powers. There's also things you can substitute for domains that can let you do stuff a number of times per day and get like turn undead with it. But you don't have access to any of that with Favored Soul, which Cleric does get. So you're losing out on 2 of the Cleric's bigger features. In exchange, I mean, what do you get? You get spontaneous casting. That's kind of cool. You get weapon focus, weapon specialization. You get energy resist to 3 elements, which, I mean, you could get with spells. You get wings. Okay, that's nice. You could get it with spells, although this is an extraordinary ability, so this will work in an anti-magic field. but you don't get it until 17th level, which is massive. So actually pulling that one off is going to basically stop you from getting any prestige classes. So that's a bit of an issue. Um, damage reduction again will also pretty well prevent you from getting any prestige classes, since you don't get that till 20th level. And wings is 17th. Like, that's absolutely massive levels. So you lose a lot more than you gain in terms of this. Honestly, I'd say cleric's probably the better class overall, although there are some advantages and some reasons why you would choose this over cleric. The spontaneous casting of it is certainly something. Gaining access to weapon focus at 3rd level is not bad. Can definitely be used to help you get access to certain prestige classes that require weapon focus with a certain weapon. If you find a deity that has that one, you could, use 3 levels of favored soul to get in and also get some divine casting along the way. Maybe throw in a 4th level of favored soul in order to get 2nd level spells. Oh yeah, that's another thing. You're a level behind, just like sorcerers on your casting. You do get more spell slots, but the fact that you don't get those domain ones, it's not actually a 50% bonus like a cleric, well, like a sorcerer gets over the wizard. It is only like 25% because you're losing domains. So that is a bit unfortunate. Honestly, it's definitely worse. I would say it's overall worse than sorcerer, just because of all the various things that you lose compared to cleric. You like going from cleric to favored soul, you lose a lot more and gain a lot less than you do from going from wizard to sorcerer. You really, really do. Like, wizard to sorcerer, you don't lose much. You lose a couple of feats. Okay. Whereas with cleric to favored soul, you're going to lose, like I said, you're going to lose domain access. You're going to lose turn undead. You're going to lose, you're going to lose the fact that you just know all your spells. The fact that another issue is the whole casting thing, the dual slot. That's problematic. Now, there are ways around it. You can choose to just focus on charisma and ignore wisdom and just only know spells that don't offer spell saving throws. That can be something you can do, but it does limit your spell selection a bit. So that's a little problematic to have to go that route. The other route is you can ignore charisma and just focus on wisdom. But you can only ignore charisma so much. You're still going to want to keep that at a 19 with your items so that you can at least cast your spells. So, with items, you're still going to want at least a 13 so that you can, with a magical with an amulet of charisma, I believe, you can get, your charisma up to a 19 and be able to cast all your spells. And then just focus heavy on wisdom with your actual stats in order to keep the spell save DCs up and not really worry too much about the spell slots, because that's really the only bonus benefit you get of a high charisma past having a 19, which you're going to need a 19 charisma one way or another. And honestly, using it with magic items isn't that terrible of an option. Just because, if you go into like anti-magic field, you will lose that, but you can't cast in an anti-magic field anyway, so who cares? Like, it's not a big deal if you suddenly can't cast your high-level spells when you can't cast any spells. Like, who cares? Like, it's a moot point at that point. So, I think you not focusing too heavy on charisma is probably the better option. The thing is, intelligence is really their only dump stat, which is problematic since that's the one for skills, and their skills aren't exactly great. Because you need strength in order to hit with your weapons. Yeah, you can ignore that and just not worry about combat, but they're decent at it. So there's that. you can always get dump decks, since you can just focus on having medium armor and not worrying about that. But you don't want to dump it too much. That affects your AC. But you can keep your decks relatively low. So that's something. Con, you're going to want just always. Intelligence, again, like I say, you can dump that. That doesn't help you any except for skills. Wisdom, that's honestly, I'd say you should keep wisdom high. But this one's a really ability heavy thing, because you're going to need 13 charisma in order to make sure you can cast all your spells. You're going to need, you're going to want your dex relatively high, maybe a 12 or something, maybe a little higher, so that you can try and get as much of a bonus from as you can, as your armor will allow you. So there's that. Although, I mean, if you're wearing like mithril full plate, it's not really that high. So 14 is probably good enough. And I mean, with magic items, you could always keep that down to, and 14, I guess you could keep that as low as a 6. So, I mean, you could jump that pretty heavy. Especially seeing as a lot of DMs won't even let you dump your stats lower than an 8. Really depends on the rules your DM's using. With point buy or with rolling, you can get as low as a 3. But yeah. Let's see. Let's look at some of these things. Energy resistance, it's kind of nice, like I say, but you can duplicate that with spells. Flight, I mean, that's cool, but 17th level, man. Like, you really have to commit to this class to get that. And by then, you're going to have a million spells that can duplicate flight. This is better, yes, but 17th level. And there's other ways to get it, like, be a Raptoran. That too. So, yeah, there's definitely some, and damage reduction, okay, 20th level. It's fine. Like, don't get me wrong, this isn't a bad class by any means. Like, this blows classes like the fighter out of the water. This is a full casting class, so it is going to be a top tier class just based on that alone, because casting's really great. But as far as casting classes go, it's got some problems. Now, it still can be quite useful in a number of builds, just because it has some unique mechanics that other classes don't have, which could be beneficial in the right build. But yeah, it's certainly something. Anyways, I think I've gone over about as much as I can with this. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like. Maybe subscribe to the channel for more D&D 3.5 content, because I do one of these on every single class, race, and prestige class in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. So ring that notification bell so you never miss out on a video. Anyways, as always, I'm Mitch. I'll be seeing you